Greetings, and welcome to this year's Disability Conference toward an Anti-Ableist Academy, Advancing Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity and Accessibility at U of M. My name is Tappy Chavis, and I serve as the Vice Provost for Equity and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer at the University of Michigan. The 2022 conference, spanning late October to early November, includes 4 60-minute online sessions that will serve as an opportunity to update the campus community on our progress in the area of disability access, while also addressing the work that must be done in order to close the accessibility gaps that exist for disabled students, faculty, and staff. This includes naming and eliminating both the structural and cultural barriers and norms that impact the daily lived experiences of our community members and undermine their equitable opportunities for growth and thriving, personally, academically, and professionally. As we start this year's conference, we reaffirm that equity and access for disabled individuals and communities is an important value and an imperative in the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, at the University of Michigan. Ableism is so deeply embedded in the fabric of our society and institutions that it can be normalized and overlooked. And our university has an imperfect history and present in this regard. But we now know that our progress and accomplishment in DEI will be incomplete and limited if it does not fully include our disability community and disability issues. And we must approach disability in a way that does not reinforce stereotypes or paternalistic views of community members as limited. Instead, we must embrace disability as an identity and community that is immensely diverse and that makes critical contributions to the intellectual and cultural richness of our campus and world. This conference allows us to learn about things that we can do, that we are doing, that we can build on and expand toward cultural transformation, including ideas and actions developed, informed, and led by members of our disability community and their allies. With this in mind, our first session today will focus on the updated standard practice guide at the University of Michigan and its emphasis on the disability community and accessibility. This advancement is one of several policy-focused steps our university is taking to ensure equitable access for all. Our second panel on October 21st will focus on the importance of a whole person approach to supporting disabled students, not only in academic spaces, but outside of classroom settings, along with personal and social challenges that all students may face in transitioning to college that can impact learning. For members of our disability community, basic access in areas many take for granted, such as doing laundry or driving, can greatly impede opportunities to learn. Our third panel on October 27th focuses on the climate and the direct and overt ableism many disabled community members face in their daily lived experiences. In order to advance disability and access and equity, we must focus on policies and practices of compliance, but also go beyond a compliance-only framework to confront and change cultural norms and attitudes. Our fourth and final session on November 3rd will mirror the first panel, but in this case focused on academic accommodations. Leveling the field in pursuit of educational equity requires specific attention to academic spaces, along with co-curricular, extracurricular, and personal and social spaces. We hope conference attendees will take away a better understanding of the subtle and overt challenges faced and navigated by our disabled community, and a better understanding of ableism as a cultural issue and a form of systemic oppression. We hope attendees will learn about and be inspired by advancements being made due in large part to the presence and leadership of disabled community members, advancements that are critical steps to becoming the diverse, equitable, and inclusive university we strive to be. As someone who recently began my role as of August, I'm continuing to learn more about the issues that face the disabled community at the societal level, as well as those that specifically impact our campus. I have seen the diversity of our disability community and their dedication and resiliency. And I am dedicated myself to collaborating with community members and allies toward improving experiences and transforming our culture. I hope that you will all join me on this journey as we look forward and move toward an anti-ableist academy at our university. Now, It is my pleasure and honor to introduce today's speakers, Phil Deaton and Jane Burles-Vincent, to discuss the what and why of digital accessibility, unpacking U of M's newest disability policy. I also acknowledge the team contribution of Kurt Murmurs, who is unable to attend today. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dr. Chavis, for continuing to support disability and accessibility initiatives as part of DEI work in our community, and for that introduction. We're super excited that you're here in this role, and thanks again for that intro. So hi, everyone. Thanks for being here at the Toward an Anti-Ableist Academy conference series. I'm Phil Deaton, and we'll introduce ourselves more in a few moments, but we did just want to make sure that folks know that they're at the right spot. So I'm one of the speakers today, and we're going to be talking about the what and why of, oh, I might be sharing the wrong screen. One moment. The what and why of disability, the Digital Accessibility SPG. So before we did start on that, I did just want to give a quick shout out, since it was an exciting morning today, to Dr. O. Faranmi Okunlami on campus, who was, I think to his surprise, featured on Good Morning America this morning, and talked a lot about disability justice, opportunity, and accessibility issues. So please, folks, go check that out. And if you know Dr. O, work closely with him, shoot him a text or an email and give him a congratulations, and just let him know how thankful we are to have him and other disabled leaders on campus. So we're thankful to Dr. O. We're thankful to all these folks who are doing such great disability work on campus and disability leadership on campus. So we appreciate you all. I am going to advance to the next slide. And over to you, Jane.
All right, good morning. My name is Jane Vincent. I'm co-presenting with Phil today, and we want to take just a moment to talk about accessibility features and protocol for this presentation today. If you would like to have captioning, we have the wonderful Letty Fox providing captioning for us today. You can turn that on by going to https://documentation.its.umich.edu/node/2062 are the instructions, or you can simply click on the live transcript button and choose show subtitle to see the subtitles for what's currently being said, or choose view full transcript to see the entire transcript of our presentation today. We will be answering questions at the end. Please click on the Q&A button and enter your questions there. And I will turn things back to Phil for the land acknowledgement.
Thanks, Jane. This is Phil. So I wanted to note that we are borrowing this land acknowledgement from our colleagues over at Disability Culture at the University of Michigan, who are working toward the creation of a disability cultural center on campus. That's their goal. So the University of Michigan is built on the ancestral, traditional, contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Council of the Three Fires, the Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, as well as the Wyandot. Today, we benefit from access to land and resources originally gained through a coercive treaty that was supposed to ensure reciprocity, mutual respect, and access to education. We believe that disability justice necessarily includes dismantling settler colonialism and white supremacy, and it also means dismantling the racist and ableist beliefs that the white settler body mind is most capable and most valuable. So thank you, Disability Culture at the University of Michigan, for that land acknowledgement. So this is Phil again. I will briefly introduce myself and then turn it back to Jane. So yeah, my name is Phil Deaton. My pronouns are he, him, and on the screen, Right now, we have a picture of each presenter, myself included, and our pets. So I am pictured right next to my cat, Shmuley, who is sitting in a shoebox next to a pumpkin. He loves fall, just falling leaves and all that kind of stuff is one of his favorite things to watch. And so I work as the Digital Information Accessibility Coordinator at the Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX office, which is a relatively new office that just came into being last year. And I wanted to acknowledge that Kurt made significant contributions to this presentation and was going to be our second presenter today. And Kurt is pictured and with their dog. And then I guess I'll go over to you, Jane.
Thank you. Again, I'm Jane Vincent. I'm the Assistive Technology Manager within Information Technology, pictured here with my cat. I would very much like to acknowledge the work of the Anti-Ableist Conference Committee, particularly Deborah Willis, Pam McGinty, and Winter McLeod. Winter also made significant contributions to today's presentation. Next slide, please. So we're going to be talking today about the new Digital Accessibility SPG. We thought it best to start with explaining what an SPG is. So an SPG, or Standard Practice Guide, is a university policy that everyone must follow. There are SPGs about security, there are SPGs about vacations and other time off. The university has a whole bunch of SPGs. The one we're going to be talking about here today is SPG 601.20, which is around electronic and information technology, digital accessibility. And we are going to be doing some definitions of EIT and of WCAG, which is the guidelines referenced in the Standard Practice Guide, in the following slides. In response to somebody's question about whether this presentation is being recorded, I am delighted to say it is. So what is WCAG? WCAG is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is a standard published by the World Wide Web Consortium. The World Wide Web Consortium also publishes a lot of standards and resources around web coding languages like HTML, mobile design, other very key areas to the internet that we all use every day. WCAG is an internationally referenced standard that many countries and organizations cite when they are saying, if you need to be compliant, this is the standard you need to be compliant with. The current version of WCAG is 2.1, and version 2.1, if you look at the SPG, it is referenced there.
Thanks, Jane. So this is Phil, and I'm going to briefly give a definition of what is electronic and information technology, since SPG 601.20 is the Electronic and Information Technology Accessibility SPG. So really, we wanted to keep the term EIT pretty broad because technology and spaces change over time. So one version of this definition includes, but is not limited to, websites, web-based applications, desktop or mobile apps, document authoring applications, documents, and digital textbooks. Again, this list isn't all-inclusive, and we really encourage you to reach out if you're using a new innovative technology in a creative way, whether that's in the classroom or for work, because we want to try to make different activities that the university has accessible. So again, we encourage you to reach out if you are unsure if technology that you're working with would be covered by the policy and how best to apply the policy to that technology.
So from the time that a student applies to the university or an individual applies to the university as a potential employee to the time that they graduate or retire, anybody here at the university makes very wide use of digital tools. And digital tools are essential to the topics of the other presentations in this conference. For example, on October 21st from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., there's going to be a presentation about MI Disability, which is an initiative by Vincent Pinty and others to use an online database to address improving care support for disabled and older individuals, providing an easier way for them to get personal care attendance. On October 27th from 4 to 5 p.m., there's going to be a presentation about a proposed disability cultural center. The center will surely use digital tools for communication and to create a welcoming environment. And finally, on November 3rd, from 12 to 1 p.m., there will be a presentation by representatives of our Disability Services Office about Accommodate, which is an electronic case management system, and about the testing accommodation centers, which include digital accommodations along with other strategies to provide access to exams.
And this is Phil again. So to ensure an equitable experience for members of our community, really all digital tools need to both work correctly with assistive technologies, such as screen readers or speech recognition. There are some that are commonly used on campus, and we try to encourage broad support. And also, they need to be inherently usable. So an example of this is just making sure that you have sufficient contrast between your text color and your background, or writing using clear, concise language. There are some good resources out there for the sufficient text color on the background that use the brands that we would definitely recommend by way of example.
So the solution, the current solution for digital accessibility on campus is, as we mentioned, the enactment of the Electronic and Information Accessibility SPG, which states as its goal that EIT should provide equal access and be as effective, available, and usable for individuals with disabilities as for those who do not have disabilities. And the SPG covers 3 areas. It covers the need for digital EIT that we procure from third parties to be accessible. It covers the need for any EIT developed in-house to be accessible. And it talks about staying on the cutting edge of providing adaptive technology to ensure that all who need to have access using adaptive technology will have that. Thank you. Phil.
So we've got 4 main topics for our session today. The first is to discuss how digital accessibility can be an anti-ableism tool. Next, we'll talk through the new EIT Accessibility SPG briefly. Third, we'll talk about accountability structures around the policy. And then lastly, we're going to end on the broader implications of the policy and some of the goals around being more digitally accessible and inclusive.
Thank you, Phil. This is Jane. And we're going to start by talking about how can digital accessibility be an anti-ableism tool. So to talk about this, we wanted to start by giving a brief overview, very brief, of what disability justice advocacy is. There's been a disability rights movement for many years, resulting in the Americans with Disabilities Act, along with other legislation. But there has been, in recent years, an awareness of the need to expand the disability rights movement to highlight how ableism is linked to other systems. Disability may be one identity that somebody has, but there are, of course, disabled people of color, disabled LGBTQ plus people, people with disabilities who are incarcerated or houseless, and other individuals whose needs are not being met. And we will be sharing the presentation slides. One of the links that we're highlighting here is performance project Citizen Valid out of the Bay Area of California, has created the 10 principles of disability justice intended to confront ableism as well as other systems of oppression, and we would encourage you to follow that link to find out more. So how do disability justice and digital accessibility interface? A very important way is that the digital environment has long been a way for disabled individuals to communicate with each other in ways that were not previously possible. One of the most exciting things, for example, about the rise of the internet is that it facilitated communication among different disability contingents, such as between blind individuals and deaf individuals. The digital environment allows rapid communication on critical advocacy issues, including voting, responding to COVID policies, other issues of concern to disabled individuals. And it also provides an option to reduce social isolation and increase social options for individuals who, for whatever reason, are not frequently able to go out and socialize. Another advantage for digital providers, all of whom are interested in empowering and growing their customer base, if individuals can rely on digital accessibility for products and systems, that will definitely help grow the customer base, particularly in terms of customer loyalty. And there's a very good recent article linked here, Digital Accessibility, the Next Frontier of Disability Rights, that I would also encourage individuals to read. So how can we foster digital inclusion? It's not only disabled individuals who may be left behind by an inaccessible digital environment. There may also be factors such as race and income. There's long been talk of the digital divide, among other things, talking about how cost barriers to the technology and internet access disproportionately affect many individuals, including people with disabilities. We know that individuals with disabilities are not the only ones affected by bias in technology. There have been studies showing that speech recognition, for example, is frequently biased against Black speakers as well as transgender speakers. Disabled communities have long advocated for remote options to be able to participate in work and school. That didn't really happen until COVID-19, when everybody needed those options. Has made tremendous progress on allowing remote classes as an accommodation, but we acknowledge that there is still quite a bit of work left to do to recognize how much remote options benefit disabled individuals.
Thanks, Jane. So this is Phil speaking again. I'm going to talk next about what the new policy related to digital accessibility is. What is this new standard practice guide? So really, the EIT Accessibility SPG is focused on providing direction and making technology accessible for people with disabilities, and aiming to ensure people with disabilities have access to activities and services supported by technology. So spoiler alert, folks, that's all of our activities. I do just want to drop a quick shout out to all of our amazing IT and communication staff across the campus who for years prior to this policy, many of whom have been working really hard to provide accessible technologies and content across campus. We really appreciate you all, and we're here to help you continue to build on that success and that conversation. And we appreciate your advocacy, which really led to this SPG in the first place. So there's three main goals of the EIT Accessibility SPG. First, we want to provide a common set of guidelines around EIT accessibility on the Ann Arbor, Dearborn, and Flint campuses, as well as in Michigan Medicine. Second, we want to improve overall usability by leveraging shared processes, procedures, understanding, and guidance to be used by university leaders and our community, the campus community as a whole. And last, we want to establish as a leader in meeting our DEI commitments and values and ensuring that we continue our long-standing commitment to people with disabilities.
So thank you, Phil. And before going on with the next slide, I would just like to call everybody's attention to Pam's link in the chat, which gives a link to today's documents, including these slides, where you will be able to click on the links that we are referencing. So in terms of responsibility for implementation of the EIT Accessibility SPG, who must implement the policy? Employees, such as faculty and staff, in administrative and academic units on all 4 of our campuses, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, Flint, and Michigan Medicine. So that, for example, when a unit is procuring software for teaching, or departments are providing websites for our current and prospective students, the SPG must be taken into account along with all other considerations for that procurement or website development. For individuals who are not responsible for the SPG, we're still encouraging them to implement it. So students creating class presentations, student groups, creating websites are technically not covered by the SPG, but we would still encourage and thank them for following the SPG to the greatest extent possible. So an overview of the EIT Accessibility SPG, again, it covers 3 areas: procurement, framework for acquisition of accessible EIT from external suppliers, and we are working with several procurement departments to make sure that this is successful. For in-house development, we are providing a framework for ensuring internally developed EIT is accessible. Again, we are currently working with many departments, many individuals to facilitate this and to, equally importantly, to learn what their situations and concerns are. And finally, we are looking at making provision of contemporary adaptive technology a core capability in what we do. So is this something we're going to be able to accomplish tomorrow? Unfortunately, no. Is this something we're going to be able to accomplish by the end of the week? Unfortunately, no. It's a journey rather than a destination. So what we're in now is a period where schools, colleges, and units can expect to familiarize themselves with the policy, consider how best to implement it within their own particular situations, and to determine long-term plans to address and continue accessibility.
So this is Phil. We're moving on to our third point that we want to cover today. So what is UM's accountability for policy implementation? And as we're talking about this, I think we'll talk a little bit about some of the accessibility structures that are here. But as with any really structural considerations at the university, we have to be kind of multifaceted in our approach and really consider the distributed nature of a lot of what we do. So we're going to talk about some accountability controls built into the policy and where we want to go with those and how you can engage around that if you're trying to be an advocate in your unit. Okay, this is a very rudimentary diagram, folks, so I apologize that this doesn't look super pretty or anything. But I did want to discuss some of the accessibility structures around the standard practice guide. If you've read the standard practice guide all the way through, you'll note that the SPG names the Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX unit and the ITS unit as playing a pivotal role in the policy and in kind of pushing that policy information out. One thing that we really want to make clear in these types of presentations is that this is not a policy that ECRT and ITS can carry alone. Every unit has unique teaching, technology, and communications concerns, and really needs to think some independently about how best to support accessibility within their ecosystem. So for example, ECRT can provide audits and procedures and compliance, and ITS can shepherd through accessible enterprise-wide technology that reaches all the units and colleges and provide technical expertise. But units really at this point should be connecting internally to figure out what they need to do to meet this policy. Many units have had these unit level strategy discussions prior to the SPG being in place. Maybe they have a committee on disability issues or accessibility. And others are starting to develop these types of structures post SPG launch. We really encourage this type of approach and this type of strategy, and we think that there's a lot of different people that the policy can impact. We want to have the end goal of making our community and our resources more accessible for all, but there's a lot of concerns and considerations that need to be at that table. So we're still building some of these structures and support around the SPG, but due to our distributed nature here at the University of Michigan, it's really clear that units also need to consider their own individual concerns and priorities and also communicate that back with ECRT and ITS. So for accountability around the policy, we believe that a goal with the policy is to create a sustainable framework for ensuring that people with disabilities have access to all that the University of Michigan has to offer. We think that this needs to happen through engagement and education, and we think that units need to model that behavior to continue to grow units who are a little bit not quite as far ahead in this capacity. So a responsibility ECRT and ITS have right now is to continue to promote informed responsibility and advise people of the policy and encourage units and departments and teams and individuals to think about accessibility in their work. Units ultimately have accountability for ensuring compliance within their purview. ECRT and ITS do monitor for compliance under the university's strategy, and we may occasionally reach out to you if we encounter something, a piece of your technology, and we're not sure if it's accessible or we think it's an important piece of technology to be accessible. We also do get reports of issues, barriers that people with disabilities or allies face trying to access technology. And if you encounter a barrier, you can feel free to give us a tip if you run into that barrier or if you suspect that something may be inaccessible. On the screen right now, I've got a link to the ecrt.umich.edu webpage. Under the Disability and Accessibility section, there's a contact form to the ECRT ADA team, and this is a good way to reach out. I'm just seeing a couple of messages in the chat. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, I think we're fine. But These are some of the structures that we have for accountability around the policy. We have an immediate need if we have people with disabilities experiencing a barrier using our tech, to address that through accommodation or direct assistance. Our ultimate goal is to be proactively accessible, but if you hear of someone having issues using your tech, please reach out to us and we want to help you facilitate that access.
So what this SPG really represents is a culture shift. And first of all, in response to some individuals who have been requesting our materials in alternative formats, thank you, and we will have those up in the folder by the end of today. So the previous approach is we used to be complaint driven. We used to be largely reactive. Accessibility would happen when there were user complaints, or accessibility would happen when there were advocates, including Phil and myself and the rest of our team would notice that there was an accessibility issue. And we lacked data to inform decision-making, particularly for non-enterprise tech. Enterprise tech is, for example, Canvas and Google and other things that ITS provides campus-wide. But we didn't really have a lot of information about what was going on in other departments. Our evolving approach is that we must be action-driven. We must be proactive, as well as responsive, to ensure that accessibility is a consideration across the board. We want to create a culture of consideration and care, so that potentially everybody is an accessibility advocate. That when, for example, a new product that's being developed in-house is being described, we want people to ask questions about accessibility in the same way that they ask questions about price and manpower and security and everything else that people ask questions about. Unfortunately, at this point, we have to be in an environment where we are assuming that products are inaccessible until proven otherwise. We have a variety of materials that we can request from third-party vendors to evaluate accessibility. But we are assuming in most cases that there will need to be some discussion to move toward having accessible products. So what would an inclusive UM be like? What is our vision? And I'm going to provide two quotes. One from Dr. Sellers, our previous Chief Diversity Officer, who said, "Accessibility is not optional. It is essential. And it is part of what the University of Michigan must be, to meet the challenges of this year and the future." Another quote comes from a group member of the Disability Culture Group at the University of Michigan, who says, "Inclusivity is not just about allowing access to all. Inclusivity is also about building access for all and renovating along the way." So again, the emphasis on proactivity. As good as the WCAG guidelines are, they do not cover every potential accessibility issue. In addition, individual users may have different needs and preferences that are not covered by the guidelines or by established best accessibility practices. So, for example, default color contrast. Somebody with low vision may have different color contrast needs than somebody who has a learning or similar type of disability. A second example is descriptive text for decorative photos. Some blind individuals want to have decorative photos, such as a picture of the campus, described. Others prefer to get through a page more quickly without hearing that descriptive text. And a final example is we've already had a number of conversations since the SPG was released. Some individuals like to click on a link and have the page that they're navigating to pop up in a new tab. Others would prefer for the current page to change. So not everything is cut and dried. The best ways that we can resolve this is, first of all, to listen to user input, to hear what users are actually doing, both on campus and from resources elsewhere, and to aim for design flexibility so that individuals can set their own preferences, and individuals can also find compatibility with the settings within their own assistive technology. So what are the broader benefits of the policy? One of the most harmful stereotypes about EIT accessibility is that it only benefits disabled individuals, and nothing could be further from the truth. So for many years, we have known that accessible design benefits everyone, and we have a long list of examples here. I'm just going to highlight a few. Curb cuts on a sidewalk were originally developed for wheelchair users, but it has been demonstrated that they are also very widely used by people pushing strollers, people pushing delivery carts, people pushing bicycles, anybody who is carrying something heavy or has something that's wheeled that they need to be able to cross the street with. Another example is automatic door openers. Automatic door openers benefit individuals who do not have reliable use of their hands. They also benefit people going into the Shapiro Library with a large armful of books. And of course, with COVID, everybody also benefited from automatic door openers because they did not need to touch with their hands the same door handle that everybody else had touched before them. They could simply either have a door open automatically or activate a button with an elbow and be able to get into that door. So in terms of EIT accessibility, compliance with the WCAG accessibility guidelines also ensures universal benefits. Some examples, mobile design borrowed a great deal from accessible design. And one of the accessibility guidelines is to have pages that automatically reflow. And the pages should reflow if they're being magnified, but they should also reflow if they're being displayed on a smaller device, such as a tablet or a smartphone. WCAG guidelines cover making text background color combinations, default combinations less excruciating. When the web was first a thing, it was very common to see yellow text on a lime green background, which was, I used to think of as accessible because absolutely nobody could read it. But by following WCAG guidelines, you avoid traps like that. There are guidelines about making text easier to understand, content easier to understand. And this benefits individuals who speak English as an additional language, who are unfamiliar with the topic being discussed, etc., as well as many disabled individuals. And finally, many individuals cannot use a mouse. Supporting alternative input strategies allows individuals who do not use a mouse to access your website or your document. But it also means that if your mouse breaks down, which happens to all of us eventually, that you are still going to have strategies available to be able to complete your work. So we need a variety of things from you. This includes your partnership. Let us know when you find something that is an issue an answer to one of the questions we got. Accessibility.umich.edu is the website that we've been maintaining, and this does contain a form to let you report issues as well as to contact us for assistance. Resources. Be aware that there are many resources out there. Let us know if there are resources that you found that we are not aware of. For example, Todd, thank you, mentioned that there is now a new feature in the latest versions of Zoom that make it easier to highlight ASL interpreters. And I would like to thank our ASL interpreters today. We ask for your participation to advocate for accessibility as an ongoing consideration. One of my happiest moments was I was in a DEI meeting, and a speaker asked if they could get away with not using a microphone, and everybody in the audience yelled no. So just raising awareness that using a microphone and having accessible web pages are important accessibility considerations, are something that everybody can do. And finally, awareness. This isn't new. This is something that we've been working on for a while, but we are now looking at extending this campus wide. And again, our website is accessibility.umich.edu.
So this is Phil. This is the end of most of our slides. So we've got our website up here again. But I know have been getting a few questions throughout and messages that we wanted to look through. So I just wanted to do a time check and see how much time. It looks like we have about 5 to 10 minutes to answer through some of these questions. And if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A and we'll try to go through those. So Jane, I don't know if we just want to go through some of these. I'm seeing one from someone about 1129. How will this be addressed with hospital staff and patients? That's a really good question. We've been working with HITS, some Health Information Technology Services, to assist them with thinking about the policy and accessibility generally. There are good advocates over there that are working really hard to get the health system kind of more in alignment with the SPG. I think that there's a lot of work to be done here. Jane, I don't know if you want to take one of these next ones. Enterprise technology, we already answered that one live from Leah or Leah.
I think most of these are in your wheelhouse, Phil, so I will
All
back
right.
you up, but I will defer to you.
So thanks, Jane. So there's another one around 11:37 a.m. from Jerry. Are there program-specific tools or guides for accessibility? For example, Qualtrics, Microsoft 365, etc. Jerry, yes, there are. We tried to provide some information on the accessibility of these products for users with disabilities directly, because sometimes there are accessibility oddities in many technologies, even ones produced by these large companies. And there are also some internal guides on campus that I've seen put together around Qualtrics, for example. I know Student Life's assessment team has put together a fantastic Qualtrics accessibility strategy, and are just very thoughtful about that. In general, a lot of companies that have a big accessibility presence, like Microsoft and like Qualtrics, have some of their own documentation, and we are happy to help you locate that if you're looking. But you can kind of sometimes search like Microsoft 365 accessibility, and you'll find two different types of resources: how to create accessible things using Microsoft 365, and then just how to navigate around the interface. That's just one example. I think Adobe and other product suites also have similar things. Doug at 11:38 asked, are we supposed to review websites, etc., to see if they meet these standards, or will IT do that? Doug, I assume you mean ITS. And as I mentioned in one of the slides on accountability, ITS and ECRT are here to help with reviewing things. We've been getting a lot of requests and are trying to kind of stay above water with that. Really what we're trying to do is empower the accessibility advocates on campus to have a presence within their units, departments, and teams to be able to bring up these accessibility issues. We've got resources for folks who have zero technical experience on how to do a basic accessibility review and really think generally about this. We don't necessarily expect that you're going to be doing all this at once, though. As Jane mentioned, this is really a journey that we're on, and we need to define our priorities at the unit and department level. So we don't encourage you to necessarily run off and try to evaluate all of your technology today or tomorrow. We think that it makes sense to have a strategic conversation with folks around your department and unit about, hey, what should we be looking at? What are some of our technologies which have really broad reach, have applications around like security and safety for our constituents, or are necessary for degree completion or for reporting time, things like that. So, Doug, I hope that that helps you. Jane, I can keep going, but feel free to interrupt me if you want to. But Haley at 1140 asks, what additional resources or training are available to staff who want to really learn more about implementation or be accessibility advocates in their units? We've got a lot of resources on the accessibility.umich.edu site, ranging from, again, that guide I was referencing for non-technical people doing an accessibility review, to guides for web developers who are doing a more thorough accessibility review. Also, I wanted to shout out, again, the communications and IT staff around the U. So Central Communications, Vice President for Communications Office, has put together resources around things like social media accessibility, color and branding accessibility. I think we're one of the few universities in the US that has really thought through how to make our brand accessible in practicality, not just in theory. So some of those things are available, and we are continuing to build educational materials and resources. If there's something you want to see available on our site or in some other format, let us know. If you want us to go talk to your unit about specific issues or just generally about this, let us know, and one of us or some of us will be there. So a next question from an anonymous attendee. What support is there if you're in more than one role? That's a challenging question because I think that it's pretty context dependent. But one thing that I want to say is that we know that everyone has a lot on their plate already. A lot of the times when I'm talking with folks around campus, one of the first things we do is, do a 2-minute debrief at the start of our Zoom and just say, wow, there's a lot going on. I just got 6 emails and, that type of thing. So I think that the way that we can be supportive there is by identifying ways for you to prioritize your time. And we really appreciate your interest in advocacy and accessibility. So if you want to reach out to us for a consultation, then we can help you figure out how best to kind of direct those, 30, 40 minutes you may have extra a week or whatever toward this. And again, we appreciate everything that you're doing on top of all the other regularly scheduled stuff that you have for your different roles. I think that the second question here at 1141 from anonymous attendee was building on that. And formally take on this responsibility in your unit. We think that units need to kind of get together and strategize, whether that's by building a committee inside the unit and discussing this at that level and having kind of dean or executive director support. And if you're looking for ways to make that happen, I really think you should reach out to us and we can help you talk with your leadership. We've got some good examples around campus, in the library and LSA, where people are doing this stuff, and other places as well. Um, 1146, anonymous attendee. Do staff members need to continue to obtain CART services, ASL? from outside private vendors? And if so, does the university plan to provide us an updated document with vendors that when we can contact to provide these services? There is a community-driven list of these service providers. And if you reach out to me or someone else who has used CART or ASL in events, we can provide a recommendation from that list. We've got some excellent ASL interpreters and CART service providers today. Thank you. And we know that there are others out there as well if you're concerned about, not being able to get someone. We are looking at this too to see if we might want to add some more suppliers to these lists. I know we're not likely to get to every question, and Pam, please feel free to cut me off here. Are templates available for us to use for our departmental websites to make them more accessible? I'm not sure I have a great answer for that one. We're going to have to get back to you on that. And I'm seeing that Sarah has messaged in the Q&A if anyone would like access to our Student Life Qualtrics accessibility guidelines. I'm very happy to share. Great to note that you're here today, and great work on all that. How are we doing on time? Oops, I accidentally stopped sharing my screen. We've got about 2 minutes, so I don't know if we may want to take some of these questions back, note down the name, and answer some of these. Would that be okay, Pam? Okay, let's see.
And Pam has kindly said we will have a document available with answers for any questions we do not get to today.
Thanks, Jane. I was juggling windows here. I think that that's most of what we wanted to cover today, y'all. I did want to just quickly put our contact information on the screen. We referenced our site. Here is our email. So if you have digital accessibility questions, you can feel free to reach out to us at accessibility@umich.edu. And I think a lot of these kind of individual questions were helpful to others, but we are more than happy to jump on and look specifically at what's going on in your unit and help you think about how to prioritize some of this work. We don't think it's all going to happen at once, and we really appreciate you making time in your role and in your colleagues' roles to work on this. So I think with that, thank you everyone for coming to our presentation and for joining us for the Toward an Anti-Ableist Academy conference series. And you should definitely go to all these other presentations and learn more about some of this great work happening on campus. And Pam has just shared that in the chat.
All right, thank you, everyone.